Good evening. Thank you all for coming. I see a lot of faces that I've seen before in these sessions. I'm going to try something, given the fact that most of the people in the audience are experienced race committee people. I see PROs, I see experienced race committee people. I see a few people who have never done this before and don't even know the language that we're going to be talking about. But they don't have to worry too much, because when they serve on race committee, they are going to be under the direction of a PRO. The PRO is a principal race officer. And this presentation tonight is directed to refresh the people who have been PROs, to refresh the people who are race committee, experienced hands at race committee. And also we're going to talk for the people who have never served on race committee or are new to sailing for that matter. We'll try and hit stuff. If you have a question, raise your hand. I may say, hey, I'm going to hit that later in the presentation, or I may try and answer you right away. One of the problems I have with this presentation is it takes a long time, so I'm going to try and go quick. You're going to see that I'm going to discuss how races are supposed to be run. That is, according to the racing rules of sailing, and this is dated 2021 through 2024. This book is updated a little bit every 4 years. But we don't, here in the Bay, we don't run our races strictly according to this book. We make some exceptions based upon the sailing instructions, and there have been some variations again because of COVID. And we'll try and get those, even though COVID is waning, we're still not exactly sure where we're going to stand. But we want you to know how to run races in general and how to run races from, and this is primarily from the word report. We're going to be talking about the one design races, which are bay races for the one design boats. They're on Saturdays and Sundays. And we're also going to talk about the yacht club. The yacht club races posts about 5 or 6 races in the course of the year. All but one is run from the Worry Wharf, which, for those of you who don't know, it's a yellow raft down in the middle of the bay, and that's where the races start. One race that we start on Long Island Sound, that's called the North Shore Yacht Club Day Race. And this year, the race committee voted will be Whitehall. For those of you who might consider being on the committee that day, Whitehall is a 48-foot trawler, the Fever. It's a fancy boat, very nice stay on the boat. Being on race committee is a long-standing Corinthian activity. People do it. All the races are run by volunteers, or the vast majority of races, certainly on Long and Hudson Bay, and throughout the country are run by volunteers, people who are active in the sport. There's a few paid committees, but for the most part we do it. And if people don't volunteer to be on race committee, it's not going to be the racing here. There's going to be very different kind of racing. So we appreciate the fact that the PRO serve and the race committee people serve with them. Even if you're not a racer, you're going to learn something by serving on race committees. The PRO is going to explain to you what's going on the water with the boats, why they're lining up the way they are, why he's picking the course that he's picking. So you're going to end up being a better sailor, you're going to be a better racer, and you're going to satisfy 4 hours of your work requirement to really up there. The principal race officer, whether he or she, is responsible for running the races, and they run them according to the rules that we pointed out. The committee is made up generally of 2 to 4 people. You're with me. All right, I'm not even talented, but you're moving. Excellent. It's 2 to 4 people, and we're going to tell you how to prepare to serve on race committee this year. you read the notice to race. Every race has a notice to race. The One Design Races annually comes out with the Cal Bay 2022 sailing instructions, YRA/Cal Bay Racing Instructions, one design to do. That's and this tells you how the races are run, what flags mean what flags we're going to have to put up and take down, and it gives you the courses, which, and this is the potential courses. This is the follow-up of the potential courses. I'll be talking about that a little bit more later. If it's a yacht club race, and the yacht club races are only open to yacht club boats, except for the day race and the Moonlight Regatta, which is a night race. Those, they have individual sailing instructions. So you must read the sailing instructions. I make sure that I put the sailing instructions in a loose leaf binder for each race. If standing in there are the sailing instructions for the One Design races, and each time that there is a yacht club race, I put the sailing instructions in this book, and this is part of the race committee equipment that we're going to get talking about in more detail. One of the people on the race committee each day has to be able to operate the race committee boat. And for those of you who are not qualified to use the race committee boat, that's about a 20-foot outboard motorboat, which serves for our junior sailing and race committee. Book to Captain Vic. He will teach you how to use it if you don't know how to use it. It's also valuable to learn not only for serving on race committee, but it's in the operation of a motorboat, which operates differently than a sailboat. And you know, most of us sail. Yes, sir.
Will that still be the Mako this year?
Yes, the same Mako. Yeah, and if you were qualified last year and you're comfortable going out this year, you're just say, Captain Vic, am I still okay? And if you feel you're okay, I'm sure he'll say you're okay. I want to talk about the race committee bags and the equipment. We are going to, one of our members of the race management committee, Evan Spence, generally stages that stuff. It's stored in the storage room there. So we put it downstairs at the head of the pier, so it's ready to go out. And it's contained in these two bags. This one has an automatic horn, which I'm going to show you in a moment, and backup horns and a backup battery. This one has other equipment. We also have a flag bag where all of the various flags that we use are stored. And each little cubby hole here identifies what flag is in there, and we ask you to put it back in the same place. But it's not too complicated. This is the class flag for the sonars. The class flag says sonars, and the hole says sonars. Got it? But if you don't put them back in the right place, the next guy gets screwed up. He has trouble. And we're going to get more detail about the flags a little bit later. We have, this is a battery pack, and again, we make sure that it's charged. It's always a good idea. If you're a PRO, make sure it is charged. If for any reason it isn't charged, in the bag, in the pocket, in which that is the charger. People say, hey, where's the charger? It's in the little pocket. What you do is you plug in, there's an automatic horn that we use for the One Design races, and they use a 3-minute start. This thing is pre-programmed for a 3-minute start, and all you do, we'll listen to this. You hear the little beep? That tells you it's got power, all right? And I'm not going to demonstrate this thing because what I ask you to do when you're using the automatic horn, and I ask you for a reason, is use earmuffs. And there's 3 or 4 sets of earmuffs in the bag. 3-minute start is a relatively new thing for us. Now, we started, I guess, with COVID. And I must say, I served on race committee the first year of COVID. We used that automatic alarm, and it damaged my ears. And I'm not kidding, it damaged my ears. So use earmuffs. On the 5-minute starts, which we use for the yacht club races, we use manual horns. And I'm going to blow this one just a second. Earmuffs are a good idea, but not as pretty. But if you think that's loud, the other one's loud.
He's right.
We're going to send you out with special marks. These are inflatable marks. I don't think the inflatable marks, we don't use this. We don't blow them up anymore. Permanently blow them, right? Yeah. This is a fan that you plug in again to that yellow thing, and it blows. But I think the marks are already.
They are inflatable, but they won't get.
Yeah, I think we inflate them for the season, and they're okay.
I think they do it on the car battery. I've seen
Yeah,
people
you can do that too, but if you have to top them off, you have the ability to top them off.
Yeah, look for the ability to stop. Sometimes they, at the end of the season, is there any formal check?
I don't know. I think there is, but I'm not positive. The little first aid kit, yes, sir.
Can you confirm, I remember about 2 years ago, the law was that the one thing that counts is the flag, and the sound is a help, which is welcome and so on. But the flag is the one that marks the time and the steps in the race.
That's true.
Then I think, as I remember back a year and a half ago, they switched around and they said, well, no, it's just the opposite. The flags are there if you want to use it, but it's the horn that marks the precise steps.
Well,
which one will be true in 2022?
the rules are that the flag counts and not the horn.
Still,
But if I say this wrong, what do you tell me otherwise? But so the flag is what governs. However, during COVID, when we were sometimes short of race committee people, or if there was a problem with the worry board, and we were starting the races from the Mako, you couldn't. The Mako doesn't have the flags. You know, it doesn't have flag halyards. So you simply had to use the horn. You advertise. You announce that on the radios, and you make sure that everybody understands what's going to happen on this particular day, and that's the way it is.
okay, but in 2022, then we're going to be counting on the flags, or on the horn, or on the win of the PRO.
No, as a general rule, you're going to count. And please understand this, the context of this discussion, everybody. We're going to use flags. We're going to use flags, and it's not the committee that cares about that. It's the racers that care about that. Because if the racers see a flag go up or down, it tells them exactly what's happening. If for some reason there's a malfunction of the horn, or if the horn is not in sequence, perfect sequence with the flag, it is the flag that counts. Is that clear?
Also, if you're far away from the organ board and your sails are rattling, you may not hear the horn, but you see the flag.
Right. But the exception is, and the PRO can, for reasons which may be appropriate under whatever the circumstances are, may announce, we are not going to be using flags today. We're going to be using horns, and that's the deal. Okay, it has to be some unusual
The
circumstance.
baseline is the flag.
Yeah.
But the PRO can make exception as always.
Yes. Yes, but he has to announce it, and he has to. Okay. We have the automatic horn gets taped to a vertical post on the word board. There's tape, there's a knife, there's string, there's all kinds of stuff that you may use for that. There is a whistle. When we start the races, sometimes if there's a failure, let's say with the automatic horn, you have a backup horn. If the backup, we have another backup horn. If two backup, if the whole thing doesn't work, you blow the whistle. And when the boats finish, the first finishing boat gets a horn, and then all the subsequent things get a whistle. So all of these things are in the kit. We have flags that the cider, which I'm going to discuss in a moment, if somebody is over early, and that is the hull is over the starting line early, they wave the over early flag, they call out the sail number of the boat that's over early, and they ask that boat to come back and come on the pre-start side of the line. Once they're on the pre-start side of the line, you say, sail number 4,000, clear, and they're clear to start. Yeah. Yes, sir.
I need to do a 360 around one of the buoy.
No, not unless that's a rule that I'm going to talk about, but real quick because we don't use it here. If so many boats are over early that it's impossible to identify them, if everybody's over early, we wave this flag, which is a general recall flag, and all the boats have to come back and start again. Yes, sir.
If it is one boat that is over, is there or is there not a time limit for that boat to cross the starting line correctly? I don't remember.
I can't answer that. I don't think there is. I don't think there is. As long as you restart, what do you have that right?
We're at the end of the race.
Yeah.
We have to go back.
Oh, I see.
We're ready at the end.
Bear in mind,
So
that
there is no time limit.
but you have to look at the sailing instructor because the sail on some races here we don't do this here, all right. But in some races, if you go to a regatta somewhere, it might say that you have 5 minutes to restart, or you must restart before the next class starts. But the sailing instructions have to specify that. They're on a general recall. There's something called go to the end of the line. So if a whole fleet starts early, and let's say there's 5 fleets. If that rule is enunciated in the sailing instructions, the next class that starts is the second class that was going to start. But if that class if that rule is announced, that fleet that's had a general recall goes to the end of the line and they start last. But again, we don't use that. If there were a general recall here, if there were a general recall on the Hassett Bay in either a club race or a one design race, you would simply get all the boats clear. You would lower the flag. You would sound the horn, which I'm going to describe in a few minutes, and then you would you start the warning signal 1 minute after you sound the general recall has been ended. That's it.
When you wave the flag for general recall, is there a sound signal?
Yes, I'm going to cover that. I'm just trying to point out equipment right now. I'll get to that. There are course charts in that loose leaf book. If somebody comes by you and says, "Hey, I don't have my course chart," there's extra course charts in here. Just you hand them one. They come by the word. Okay, it's a good idea to bring binoculars. If you don't have your own binoculars, there's a set of binoculars right on top of those radios over there. You can take it out for the day. You just have to remember to bring it back. Evan or Captain Vic will stage the starting pins and anchors, and the special markers and anchors. In other words, they'll be at the foot of the dock or actually loaded into the race committee boat. We do want you to take out the special marks. Those are used when the wind is coming from a direction where the pre-identified marks don't have a first mark, which is a beat. So we very much encourage a first mark to beat. And I encourage you, instead of starting a reaching start, for instance, use a special mark. On the day of the race, we want everybody to check the weather, know the predictions for the sea, the sea state, check high and low tides, check the current on Manhasset Bay. And for those of you who don't know how to do those things, there are apps which I'll be glad to go into in a few minutes that I use for predictions of current on Manhasset Bay or tides. Make sure that everybody has food. The yacht club pays for lunch for the entire committee. The PRO should be in touch with the people who are going to serve with him or her and say, okay, what do you want for lunch? Either everybody brings their own or he buys it, or but address lunch, drinks, that kind of stuff. And again, I say the yacht club pays. The PRO has to be sure that all the equipment is there, staged, ready. Good idea to look in the bag, make sure everything's in the bag. The one design races start at 2 o'clock for 1,400 hours. North Shore Yacht Club races, if there's going to be a race, is at 1:30, 13:30 hours. It's generally best to be at the yacht club by noon, which gives you an hour and a half to get ready to go out to the boat, set this, you have to dress the worrywart, which I'll get into a little bit, and set the starting and finishing marks. Everybody has to have a PFD, personal protection device, to go out and serve on board. Make sure that you have, if there's a yacht club race, the entry list, which the yacht club publishes and will have available, so that you can make sure that boats are sailing. The yacht club races generally say, and the sailing instructions generally say, that we will take entries up until the warning signal, which means that even if somebody, you have 5 boats or 8 boats listed, if somebody from our yacht club comes out and says, hey, I want to race, we let them race. We want to encourage everybody to do more races the better. All right, so the stuff is at the bottom of, right in front of the door downstairs on the deck. The PRO makes sure that stuff gets brought out to the race committee boat and loaded onto the boat. Captain Vic will generally have the boat at the dock. It will be generally fueled, but ask him, hey, is it recently fueled, so we want to make sure that's gas. Be sure the special marks are there, the starting mark and the finishing mark are there. Starting mark has a mark with one flag on it. The finishing mark has 2 flags on it. If for any reason the boat is not in the dock, you make arrangements with the launch guy to take it out there, then you go to the dock and load it up. It happens occasionally. Upstairs in the storage room, there are bridge chairs and folding chairs and a bridge table. They get loaded so that you have a place to sit and record your racing, what time you finish. Make sure that you have 1 or 2 handheld radios on the committee. The boat, the race committee boat has a onboard radio which works and has a better range than most of the handheld, but it's good to have, I would say, 2 handheld, so you can talk to the other boats if you have to. You go to the racing, you can make announcements, and it's good to have radios more involved. If the conditions are, yes, sir.
You pointed out that under normal conditions, the committee vote will be at the top.
Yes.
Normally. In the past, there has been some oscillation between returning the committee vote to the dock or to the mooring.
I hit
Is
that
still
later.
optional?
I hit that later.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The quick answer is, you talk to Captain Vic. Sometimes he or the launch guys will take the boat back to the mooring. If they give you any indication that that's inconvenient or not, the PRO make sure that happens. The point is to cover. If the weather is such that it's appropriate to cancel the race or postpone the race, even before you go out to the warriors, because it's very windy, because there are thunderstorms, because there is no wind. There is a procedure for putting up flags and blowing off noise and so on. But the best thing to do is to simply call the other clubs, call the steward, and call the people that are listed on. This is on the One Design races. We have phone numbers for both the yacht club and for the race committee chairs. Or in some cases, if you know who the key racers are, you call those people. But the point is to make it absolutely clear that the races are either postponed or canceled because of weather. And if there are people in our yacht club either hanging around, sometimes they're hanging around waiting for word, that's fine, you tell them. But sometimes they're out on their boats. You make sure that, again, they get the word either by radio, or we send a launch guy out there and tell them, races are postponed or canceled. Okay. Like I said, it's best to be here about an hour and a half ahead. When you get to the worry ward, best to tie up on the starboard side and unload the equipment and marks, except the marks. You don't unload the marks. The cabin door is generally locked. The combination is 1891, and there's a cheat book that's attached to this bag that tells you all the things I'm telling you, all right, including what is the combination to the word. So there are backups to these things. 1891 is the year that the Manhasset Bay Yacht Club was founded. 20 years after the North Shore Yacht Club. Okay, so you unlock the door, and then you begin to dress the worry ward. You set up the folding chairs and table. You hoist the club burgee, which is, my attitude is if you can read, you can be PRO. So, race committee flag, club burgee, got it. You open that up, you're there. And you set up, you put up the race committee flag on the back mast. You set up the battery pack and the horn. We talked about tying the horn to a vertical post on the same side that the starting pin is going to be on, which is the side opposite where the race committee boat is tied up. Make sure the horn is working. This is the automatic, but if you start this automatic horn, it says on it reset. So if you started it just to be sure it's going to start doing its thing, you hit two buttons at the side, because again, you can read it. You hit the two buttons together, and it ends the sequence, and you can start it again with sequence start. The rolling start. Pardon me? It's a rolling start. No, it's not a rolling start. I'm going to come to that. We don't use rolling start. We put out the entries, you know, who's going to be in the race, and there's one here for the one design vote. Good idea to put it on a clipboard so it doesn't go away. Have the manual horns at the ready. You have the whistle at the ready, just in case things don't go right. Have the binoculars, and we agree on what watch is going to be the official watch for running the race. Take the orange starting flag to a vertical post, so that becomes one of the starting. Have the blue finishing flag ready. The finishing, that was a change a couple of years ago, where you now, the finishing flag or the finish line is between a blue flag that's flying from the committee boat and the finishing pin. On the one design boats, sometimes it's, most of the time it's the same as the starting line, but if there are, excuse me, if there's one design races without the North Shore race, the starting and finishing line is one and the same. But again, you put up the blue flag because that's what the rules say to do. On the days when there's a North Shore Yacht Club race, we use a separate finish line, so we don't have boats crossing one of the finish line in opposite directions or finishing while we're starting another race. Because the one design races do multiple races. We stage, there are flag halyards on the worry wart. We stage the postponement flag. It looks like that. And again, it's in a compartment that's a postponement. But you position it so that it's hidden, and it's easily done because there are side pins. People can't, the sailors can't see it. And you have to, you want to be sure that when you are postponing, you've actually raised it. And if you keep it hidden, the PRO assigns jobs to the signaler, the person who's controlling the horn. They control the horn. They have a handheld horn in their hand just in case something goes wrong. On the day when it's not North Shore Yacht Club race, the hand horn is going to be the horn. You're not going to be using the automatic horn. That person keeps everybody aware of where we are in the starting sequence. And again, whether it's a 5-minute sequence or a 3-minute sequence. We need somebody to sight the starting and the finishing lines to make sure that nobody's over early. That person will have in his hand those flags that I showed you to say the whole number of 4,000 is over early. And he calls out clear when the boat is clear. No part of this hull is on the racing side of the starting. There's somebody who records things. Yes, sir.
It was the same guy asking stupid questions. Could you remind me what is signaling? If it's a 5-minute stop or a 3-minute stop?
The sailing instructions will tell you that, but I'll make an absolute statement, all right? The one design races, the Cow Bay Racing Association races, which started at 2 o'clock, are 3-minute starts. North Shore Yacht Club races are 5-minute starts with a variation. And you know, sometimes we use a racing start, sometimes we use a cruising start. But they all start with a 5-minute sequence. And I'll get into a little bit more detail into it in a little bit. Okay, so we have somebody who's sitting there at the table reporting which boats are racing and what time they finish, what sequence in which they finished, or if it's a North Shore Yacht Club race, if it's a racing start, we record just the finish time, minutes, hours, minutes, seconds, hours, minutes, seconds. If it's a cruising start, we record the hour, minute, and seconds of both the start and the finish. Again, I'm going to repeat that again. Somebody has to post the course, and the course is determined by the PRO, but the courses have to be put in placards in the worrywart, and there's racks on the side of the worrywart in the cabin, and we post those vertically for each fleet. So it might say PU or ABD. It's a sequence. And if there's more, they can post one fleet at a time or several fleets at a time, but they're vertical. And if they're posting several fleets at a time, it's the sequence in which they're going to start right to left. We have somebody who's a communicator and with a radio, they're talking to the fleet as needed. PRO is directly responsible for everything, supervising the people on the race committee, all the equipment, the assignments, everything. He sets the starting line, he sets the finishing line, he sets the course that people are going to sail. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more. In the past, when I was younger, race committees were very formal. They didn't talk to the boats unless there was some emergency. And it was frowned upon to talk to the boat, and the boat didn't ask for it. If they asked for information, they weren't necessarily responding. Things are much more liberal now. We encourage the race committee to make announcements on the radio, to clarify, to answer questions. People are not sure where we are in the sequence. We tell them if we're, particularly, with the flags, whether we're using flags or not, you make, okay, this is the sonars are going to start. The sonar flag will be up at that point. We're going to be doing more racing today. This is the last race of the day. That's the end of it. Whatever's going on, don't hesitate to make the announcement, but don't overdo it either. We've had a couple of PROs who talk too much. You want to answer questions and you want to put out hard information. So you put out the courses ABC, and it's port, starboard, starboard. And that means you leave it to port, the first one, and the second one to starboard. And again, I'll get into that a little bit more when I talk about posting the courses. The one design boats always use channel 69 to communicate. For the yacht club races, always check the sailing instructions. They'll tell you what channel we're using.
Is it fair to say, once you see that the race committee should not respond to questions already in the 5 minutes. I've heard that many times. People say,
I would not agree with that.
would not agree.
It's common, particularly in North Shore racing. Less so, I would say, in the one design racing. I could mention some names, but he would be. He's here and he'd be embarrassed. Somebody comes out late, or they don't necessarily listen to each one of the guns or the horn signal, or they don't really watch the So the sequence has commenced, and the guy said, "Where are we in the sequence? What did that horn mean?" Please tell him what the horn means. Tell him that that's 3 minutes to the start, or tell him we're in the sequence and it's 4.5 minutes to the start, and answer those questions. We're trying to encourage our members to race, and we're trying to get the cruisers to race, trying to get everybody to race, and we don't want to be difficult about it. Even on the day race, which is on the sound, and which is a YRA, that's YRA, Yacht Racing Association of Long Island Sound. I would be liberal about that. That's me, and I encourage everybody to do that. But again, I would not say, I would not announce where we are in the sequence unless asked. So, and that has been I think he fell asleep with his fan on. So one of our race committee PROs, horn goes up. All right, that's 3 minutes to the start. If for instance you're not using flags, that might make sense. But if you're using flags and normal sound signals, stick to the rules. Answer questions if they're ready. Yeah. Oh, they went around the course and they didn't see the marks. Oh, to get the course. You announce the course. Announce the course. Announce the course. Don't hesitate. A, B, C. The court started.
You have to try. Show
No. But she's saying if people didn't see it, and some people are late. Some people think it's on that side of the word wart. They came on that side of the word wart. So help them. And if it's me, again, if I think there's experienced racers out there, I'm not going to announce the course unless asked. That's what I would do. Does anybody have a different view of that? So, but if asked, absolutely not. And what happens, particularly again in the North Shore Yacht Club races, sometimes people barely make it to the starting line. Now, as a general rule, we'll wait for a boat. We'll have a postponement for a boat that we know is on the way out and not there. But some of them, you didn't realize they're coming. All of a sudden, they're coming. There's 1 minute to the start. The guy says, "What's the course?" "On the course." Okay. And I'm going to talk a little bit later, when we talk about shortening courses or changing courses. There, not only do I want announcements, if we're going to shorten the course, I want the word work. I want if we're shortening at a mark that's out in the bay, I want the race committee boat to go out there and tell them. I want to tell everyone in the boats because they can't hear you and they're not listening to the radio. Or unless you can confirm on the radio that everybody has heard. If there's 5 boats, if you can reach either them, hey, did you hear it? But because they don't hear the horn, they carry it. They certainly can't see the flags. Okay, so now for the day race and the Moonlight Regatta, we have predetermined courses, and we'll announce course A, course B, course C, and course A, course B, course C is made up of a series of marks which are covered or described in the sailing instruction. But short of that, we take our courses from this chart, and this is a blow-up of the chart, but every racer should have this chart. This shows us where the worry wart is, WW. Pardon me?
Closer to-
Oh. Without getting blinded? All right, so this is a blow up of the chart, which is only, most of us have an 8.5 by 11. Am I not doing this right, Roger?
You're doing fine.
Oh,
Keep going.
okay. Oh, you have to turn on that camera, right? Oh, right. So the PRO is going to pick a sequence of courses, and for, let's say, most of the one design races, they like windward leeward races. So a typical one will be UP, and we want the first mark generally left to port. So it'll be posted U on a placard with a red background, which says it's left to port, and then P it generally again would be red because you're going like that, and you want to be able to put a string around the course without it crossing itself. Now, a typical yacht club day race might be UK6. I'm just making this up. U to port, red. A to port, so red. 6 to port, red. And then it's understood that after that, you go back to the worry word. You might go U to port, I to starboard.
Wandering out.
Pardon me?
Wandering out.
All right, I's not a good one. Yeah, right. Well, hopefully, last year, I was most of these marks are racing marks, not government marks. And I last year was floating around in its general vicinity. So we tended not to use I because it was understood that it wasn't where it was supposed to be. But we often will, and if the wind is, let's say the wind is from the north, we might go D to starboard, gangway, which has a name, C to starboard, and then back to the whirring word. But so the courses are taken off of this chart. Oh. So again, one design boats generally like short. Can I keep talking?
Yes, keep going.
Okay.
Doing great.
All right. We're having a little IT issues here.
No, we're not having any issues at all.
Okay, so they like windward leeward races, and they like them short, so they can have 2 to 4 races in the afternoon. The yacht club wants a race that's going to take 2 to 3 hours, one race, usually a triangular course or some course which is not just windward leeward. We want some reaching, some beating, some running. Okay. Windward starts are generally the best if you can do it, and you can always do it if you have, even if you have to set a special mark. And again, leave the mark to port. And there are technical reasons to avoid the conflicts at a mark. Why you leave the first one to port. When you're picking a course, when the PRO is picking a course, if he has any doubt, it doesn't hurt to reach out to some of the experienced racers in the fleet. Generally, try and do that on a different channel, not let's say 69, one of the young racers. And say, hey, I'm thinking about such and such a course. What do you think? And the guy might say, great. He might say, what are you, crazy? I did, in fact, one time I was race committee, I started it with a downwind start. You know, it was the second or third race of the course of the day. It was a wind shift. I did not have special marks out. So, you know, a couple of people, downwind start, really? Yeah. And the PRO has the right to do that. PRO has the right to call the course. On days when there is one design racing and North Shore Yacht Club races, always set a separate finish line, and that has to be announced by hoisting code flag F. You hoist it on the halyards, and that lets everybody know that there's going to be a separate finish line. And that's particularly important with the one design boats because they are used to using the start finish line as one line. And it does it. That's something that I would announce on the radio also. When I put up the flag, but I'd also announce it to make sure everybody knows. When I say announce, you know, very often on the one design boats, they're coming right by the worry ward, you know, either to register, saying I'm here, checking in with the race committee. But so you can talk to them too. It doesn't have to be over the radio. You can talk to them. And ditto with the North Shore boats. But again, if there isn't a good windward mark on the first race, set a special mark directly upwind. You could also set a downwind special mark, but the upwind, the first mark directly upwind is more important than directly downwind. So sometimes we just set one special mark up, and then sometimes you can special one special mark for the first mark. Sometimes you can use a pre-range mark for going turning around on the bottom on a windward road. Sometimes you have to set both the windward and the windward. Okay, I talked about some of the North Shore Yacht Club races. Again, the sailing instructors will say this. If there might be two divisions, they might be split based on PHRF ratings. They might be split on the kind of boats that are racing boats versus cruising boats. You have to read the instructions. The sailing instructions will say that they'll each be set. Generally, it says that there will be one start, but there may be two separate courses. So again, you post the two courses, and you announce that there's going to be both Division A and Division B are starting together, but there's two different courses, and these are the courses. And you post the different courses. If they're going to sail the same course, which again the PRO can do, you just say that, and we score them separately. We score the first division and the second division separately, so we can give out more trophies. So more people. When you're describing a course to race, whether it's one design or PHRF. PHRF stands for Performance Handicap. That's how North Shore Yacht Club races. They're handicap racing. The different boats are racing against one another with a handicap system. You must consider the strength of the wind, the conditions on the bay, potential no wind, potential changes of wind, things of that nature. And most of the PROs know that, and they will discuss it with the race committee people. One of the things that it's important to keep in mind is that we're always trying to find more PROs. So when someone has served on race committee for a couple of times and they feel comfortable, they would say, hey, I'm ready to do a PRO. Or sometimes the heavy hand of Richard will come on your shoulder and say, I think you're ready. What do you think? So we're trying to get more PROs. And this year, by the way, we have 12 race committee days, whereas last year we only had 10. So there's going to be a little bit more demand for PROs and race committees. You consider the current, the tide, you consider everything. Okay, if you expect unreliable wind, I like to think about twice around courses. Much easier than trying to go out in the middle of the bay and say, okay, we're finishing the race. You know, you had a course, let's say, of D, C, and back, and you decide there's no wind and we're going to finish the race at C. The race committee boat has to go out there. First of all, you have to announce it before any boat goes around D. And you have to be sure everybody heard you, either by radio or by running the race committee boat out there, which is difficult. So I much prefer if you expect light winds or if you have light winds, if you do a OA twice around, on the second lap, and I'm going to describe this in more detail later, they have to go through the finish line. So all you have to do is put up a shortened course flag, announce that there's a shortened course, and you can see the boats coming at you. And they finish, when they go across the finish line the first time, they go the second time. Yes, sir.
Is it still a blue place that they go through the finish line? Less finish?
No, the one design races do not use that, and our North Shore Yacht Club races do not use that. Thirsty Thursday uses it, but we're not talking about Thirsty Thursday here. And I'll try and come back to it. So I'm going to hit that. When there are North Shore Yacht Club races on the same day as one design races, we are generally class 6, and that's the class 6 flag that's flown, just like the Sonar flag or the Ideal 18 flags or the Massacre. One design boats each have their own flag to announce that this is the course for, or the starting sequence for that class. And that's generally what we use. But again, check the sailing instructor. If it's a one design race, they generally put the starting pin, which has one flag, on the port side of the worry warp, and that's used. And unless there's significant wind changes, you just keep using that starting. And the one design, the yacht club races, we'll use that starting line also. And don't forget, we're going to be starting our races a half an hour before their races start. So
Can you designate where to start?
It's attached by the bow, the anchor, the mooring line is the front of the boat. So if I'm looking at the front of the boat, the right-hand side is the starboard side, and the left-hand side is the port side. Then it's like
And
a
I
boat.
think there are only cleats on the starboard side.
Pardon me?
I think there are only 2 cleats on the starboard side. Just me.
Double side is yellow.
If you're starting a race, you know, if it's, well, we don't have any races that are scheduled to start, you know, not from the word, so, except with the exception of 2 races that I mentioned. All right, the starting line, you make your best effort to have a square starting line, square to the wind, and hopefully the first mark is upwind. And what that means is that when if it's not square to the wind, you're going to get boats bunching up at what's called the favored end, and they're going to know which line, if the starting pin is closer to the first mark than the worry warp, more boats are going to start closer to the starting pin than at the worry warp. They're not going to be spread across the starting. When you set the mark, starting mark, and finishing mark for that matter, you do your best to drop the anchor, but then give it a couple of minutes to settle, because the scope in the anchor line, and sometimes it drags. So you want to be sure that the pin is in fact in the position you want it in, which is perpendicular to the first mark, perpendicular to the wing, that part right, and so on. And if you've made a mistake, move the pin. You send the race committee photo out there again, even if it means a short postponement. The starting line should be about 1.5 in length, 1.5 times the cumulative length of the boats that are racing. And if you have multiple fleets, including, let's say, North Shore Yacht Club races on that day, try and anticipate the fact that the North Shore Yacht Club boats will be a little bigger, and you may sell a longer line. If there's time, and if you think it's necessary, after the North Shore Yacht Club boats start, you can move the starting pin closer to the word work and make it shorter starting. But if it's too short, you're going to get bunching of boats. And if it's too long, you're going to exaggerate any out of squareness. Setting the finishing line, again, that's when there's a North Shore Yacht Club race. It should be square to the course from the last mark, as carefully as possible. And I could all tell you some of the war stories. We once had a race out here where the boats didn't know whether some of the boats went this way, some of the boats went that way. The better the line is square to the last leg, the better. The more privileged. And if you're really in a position where you see potential confusion, where we get lots of radios saying, "Hey, which side do I go?" Tell them which side to leave the word with. Tell them. The starting line can be shorter than the finish line can be shorter, but just make sure it's not so short that you get bunching of both where you can't identify them. To record the names of the boats that are racing or the sail numbers. If you're unsure if there's a boat sailing around that looks like they might race, hail them, radio them, make it clear, know whether you got to know who's in the race and who's not. Sometimes you get spectators that are hanging out around there. If it's truly a spectator, ask them to move away from the starting, because they'll get in the way of the boat that are racing. Okay, this is the posting of the marks, on the shelves for the placards to go into, and they're displayed vertically on the same side as the starting pin is on, so people don't have to wonder where they are. If there's a problem of any sort, the PRO can postpone the start. He can postpone it, or she can postpone it before the first gun, before the first sound, during the sequence. They can postpone it any time up to the start for good reason. Obviously, it shouldn't be done frivolously, but you have the right to do it. And if there is some need, if the committee isn't ready, if they screwed up the time, the horn didn't work, and we couldn't recover quickly enough, you could do that. Yes, sir.
What would be a good postponement?
Depends on what the nature of the problem is. It shouldn't be indefinite. but you raise the postponement flag and with the I'm going to come into with a sound, and when it comes down, you again make a sound, and you take it down, and then the starting sequence starts a minute after it comes down.
Is there a minimum amount of time, so you put a postponement flag? Should you-
Yeah, but it could be a minute, it could be 10 minutes, it could be 20 minutes. If it goes into 20 minutes, I urge you to announce what's going on, why you're doing it. You know, don't keep people in suspense. Let them know what's going on. Okay, I talked about the string around the course for a proper course. And you do that because you don't want boats crossing shacks going like that. You know, it happens to some extent, but the less of that you have the better. If you post a course, and I'm going to get into a little bit more detail of this. UP is not twice around course. If it's UP and the T flag, just UP and the T flag, I'd be twice. It's twice around UP. But if it's UP, you have to go around it, but you don't have to go through the finish line. That's the important distinction. If it's UP twice around, you have to go through the finish line to commence the second rotation. If it's UP, you can go through the finish line or not, but you don't have to.
Say that again. You have to go through the finish line twice around.
If it's UP and the T flag, you have to have.
So you're actually starting again.
No,
Starting.
when you're going through the finish line, don't forget. Well, it depends. If it's a one design race, we only have the start finish line. So you must go through the start/finish line to commence the second time around. But you just keep racing. You just go around it twice.
Wait, that's if the T flag is up.
If the T flag is up.
Yeah, I don't think one design does T flags anymore.
Well, if I was PRO, I would reserve the right to put up a T flag. I can tell you. And I'm very serious about that. I mean, to me, if there is, if I'm trying to get in a race because there's no wind, or I expect a thunderstorm, or whatever condition I expect to put the a race in jeopardy for completion, I'll post UP with twice around. You know, unless you guys tell me it's forbidden in the one design races. Yes.
So just a clarification, the UP twice around allows you to finish the race after one UP. You don't have to tell people ahead of time.
Oh no, you have the race committee has to put up the shortened course flag, and they have to announce on the radio that we're shortening the course and we're finishing it at this.
But you have to do that before the last mark.
Before they hit the mark before the finish line. So if it's T, you know, let's say the course was UP. All right, you go around U. Before they get to P, you have to tell them the course is the race is going to end when you get back to the worry wheel.
So once they've rounded P,
You can't
You
announce
cannot-
it after.
you cannot short.
You can't shorten. If one boat, if the lead boat goes around P, you can't shorten. In the same way, even if the course is OA, and for whatever the course is OA. away, starboard, starboard. The race committee sees a thunderstorm coming. Instead of doing that, before a boat gets to O, they announce shortened course, ending at A, shortened course. The race committee boat goes out there and takes finishing at A. Is that clear?
So
I don't think we, pardon me?
So finish line there,
Well, the race committee has to go out, anchor, it puts up a S flag because it's a shortened course, and it announces on the radio, the finish line is between the race committee boat and A.
So you don't round A.
You don't round A, you go through, you use A as a pin.
And you put like, put a blue flag up in the middle?
Yes, yes. Now, I must tell you, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen because it's too hard. I mean, to me, it's too hard to communicate with the folks on the course.
So when you say UP, it's an example, it could be NY.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I thought that there was a special flag for UP. Thank you.
UP. We don't want anybody P. We don't want UP. But
Sorry.
yes, it's just an example, of course. Yes.
Last year, at the product, we did do that.
At our open regatta.
Our
Okay.
open regatta, they shortened course. They well before the last mark, they sent out a chase boat. Every boat, probably every single boat, not entering where we said it, and in the bay, it just wants to go there, and it worked great.
That's why, but I say,
Perfect example.
it's a perfect example, but the race committee did its job. It went to each boat and made sure that they got the word. Because if they just put up the S flag on the race committee boat and sounded off some horn, you know, the races are 5 miles away. Huh? Yeah. And even if you try to call them, half the guys have their radios off, even though the sailing instructors tell you to keep them on, or they don't have that kind of range.
Are you saying that it's not sufficient to announce this on the radio, but you actually, the race committee board has to reach each racer and explain that that's sometimes impossible, they can be 2 miles apart.
Chase boat.
Well, I say that, I understand, that's a matter of courtesy. But if you don't do it, somebody's gonna be pretty ticked off. They spent the whole day racing, and you didn't tell them it was a shortened course.
So you have to try to get confirmation.
Yeah. You know, but bear in mind, the rules don't say that. The rules say, put up the S flag, announce it, and you don't announce it, and you shoot the horns off. That's all it says. But did they hear you? They didn't hear you.
But one design, we pretty much stay south of Plum Point, because once we go north of Plum Point, power boats go more than 5 miles an hour. And if the wind is light, it shakes over the net sails. So we'd rather have 2 or 3 or 4 races south of O and W and A. And we can have multiple races that way, depending on the wind, we can make decisions.
But very low, even if you were a W and we sounded a horn and put up the S flag, you wouldn't hear it. And yeah, but if you happen to have your radio on, you know, just like I know, that some of the one design races don't keep the radios on,
Well,
right?
the wind is like it will.
Okay. Well,
And
if
the
you say
other
so.
most important thing is you have to time the start for the one design to make sure they make the first mark within the first 30 minutes.
I'm gonna hit that, I guarantee you. Okay, all right, I think I have beaten to death. The next slide is twice around, but I think I've covered that pretty good.
Just do it twice.
Pardon me? Okay. One design races, 3-minute start. The program, the horn is programmed to do that. I talked about the earmuffs. you raise the flag of the next course of the next fleet that's to the start. So if you have sonar before you press the thing that starts, the horn starts with what's called a come hither or give me your attention signal. Beep, beep, beep. That's outside the normal sequence. It just says, hey, look at the race committee folks. There's going to be something happening. Less than a minute later, and at that point, the flag for the class that's going to race should be up on the mast. And if there's any doubt about it, you make a radio announcement. We're about to start the sequence for the sonar with the NASA one design or whatever the case may be, or for North Shore Yacht. And again, the same come hither signal, if you're doing it by hand through the 5-minute start for the yacht club, you do book to get people's attention. And then a minute or less thereafter, you start the real sequence. The sighting guy has to be sighting on the starting line. He has to have the over early flags in his hand. He has to be ready to pull people over. We almost never have a general recall around here, so you shouldn't have to worry about that. Is there anybody who disagrees with that? Do we have general recall? Generally, it's one or two votes over. If it's a North Shore Yacht Club race, we're doing it with a stopwatch. There's a stopwatch in the bag. Most of us use our Apple Watches or have a regular stopwatch. 5-minute earmuffs. So again, the sighter is watching the starting line to be sure people aren't over. Again, the race committee can postpone for any reason at the call of the PRO. Keep conversations to a minimum. You verify that the flags are being used or at the ready. You make sure everybody who's doing what job they're doing. If you have a separate finish line, you have to be sure that your T flag is up to indicate a separate finish line. You can postpone if you have to. You put up the postponement flag with 2 long horn blasts. I didn't remember there was 2 long horn blasts before, but not 2 horn. And you don't do this frivolously. You do it if the sequence got messed up, if you made some kind of an error, if the wind changed, if the wind stopped, if you have to move change the course marks. And then when you lower it, it's 1 long horn blast, and then the starting sequence for that fleet commences 1 minute later. And it's the same old starting sequence of 3 minutes or 5 minutes, depending upon the fleet. The PRO, if the weather conditions are such, can ask for everybody to wear PFDs. If you put up the Y flag, everybody who is on the water has to wear a life jacket. We do that when conditions dictate.
How often have you seen that fall?
I have never seen it flown here in the Bay, but but again, this is a course on how to do it and then how do we do it. So, but you should know that you have that option. If you want to run a race when it's blowing, let's say a one design race when it's blowing 20, and if the guys agree to, and you've told the people and they're ready to race when it's blowing 20, nothing wrong with that. If you expect thunderstorms, nothing wrong with that. Same thing with the yacht club race. If you want to get the race in and you're concerned about safety, demand it.
Racist protests, the race committee, if you didn't put it up and it was
That's a question for a lawyer that, and preferably what do you call the lawyers who are?
Maritime.
Yeah, but they have another name. But yeah, maritime lawyer.
Admiralty.
Oh, admiralty lawyer, yes, that's, no, I'm not gonna answer that question. But it is pretty rare. It's rare that race committees are sued. I won't say it never happened, but you know, there's been times when race committees started races when the conditions were deplorable, dangerous, and so on and so forth. And then people die. But generally, you know, when you sign up for most races, there's a disclaimer. Which reminds me, maybe the laptop should have that. I don't think we do. But, you know, kind of a whole harmless agreement. Okay, you begin to see with the 3-minute start how many horns are going to be with that automatic horn. And that's why I'm telling you, put those muffs on. A lot of horns. And that's what surprised me when I ran that first race in October. I'm used to, you know what, 3 or 4 horns in the course of a starting sequence. All of a sudden, you know, count up those horn flags out there. And that thing is, no kidding. Okay, you see there too, the class flags for the one design races. And they're all in the bag. Just try and put them back in the same bag. Not only are they on the top of the bag, you know, the slot, but the flag itself is.
That's 21 beeps. I just counted it.
Well, that's why I have a hearing problem. My wife tells me I don't hear anything. Okay, on North Shore Yacht Club races, 5-minute start. And again, you see how few horns there really are. You see the class flag for class number 6, and you know you see the preparatory flag, which I'm going to get into. Well, the preparatory flag goes up. You see where it says preparatory on the left? That flag goes up, and this little sheet tells you when the flag goes off and when it goes down. If we're using a cruising start, and they're only used in North Shore Yacht Club races, we go through the normal 5-minute sequence before the starting signal. And then there is a 5-minute window during which you have to start. You can start any time during that starting window. And the race committee is obliged to take your starting time on the same watch that they're going to take your finish time with. And generally the race committee, or what I do, is I make sure I use a world clock timer, which is available on your cell phone. But it doesn't have to be world clock. What matters is the same watch. So there's no question about, you know, somebody's watching a little bit different than the other guy. Same starting sequence, same flags. At the end of the window, we call for a long horn blast. And if you haven't started within that starting window, you don't count. The time is not there. I'll raise the question of rolling starts. We don't use rolling starts except Thursday night, but I'm going to tell you what they are. The rolling start is when, and it's generally used on handicap boats, where the starting signal of the class that starts is the warning signal for the next class. So the classes keep going, and the group started, the next group is going to start 5 minutes later, and their warning signal was the start of the prior class. But we don't use it, but it's something you should know. And if you go to this race Thursday nights, we do use it. And that's simple. We use it. Yes, sir.
Richard, how is over early
you have to go back and clear before the other boats come along to start, and that's 5 minutes later. So you have 5 minutes. I'm not sure what the rule is. Do you know what the rule is, Woody?
You just have to cross the line.
Okay, so you could start with the next fleet or 2 fleets later.
But
But
you have no rights when you start with
you
the
have
other
no rights, you have no rights on the line in terms of
Right.
port
Port
starboard,
right.
windward, leeward, any of that stuff. You
You have
don't
no
have.
rights between people that start.
But
correct.
I would urge you to start within 5 minutes. Get the hell out of there before the next time along. And again, I talked about, there are other rules that we don't use. Somebody mentioned, if you're over the starting line, if you're on the course side of the starting line a minute before the start, you have to go around the end of the starting line. We don't use it. You should know about it, but we don't. There are scoring penalties, particularly if you're in a series. Again, we don't use it. Okay. Individual recall, I think we beat that to death already. If the hull was over, and by the way, that's a change from several years ago. It used to be if any part of the boat and its equipment, so if the bowsprit was over, if a crew member was standing like that, it was over. It's the hull, and they're clear to start once they clearly their hull is on the pre-start side of the hull, and the race committee calls out over early with a sail number, and they're clear, they call out the sail number again, and clear. And if there's any question, you do it on the radio. But it is the obligation ultimately of the racer to hear you. You don't have to get yourself crazy, although it's polite to make a sincere effort to let the guy know. But in the end, the onus is on him. And if he didn't clear, you can write him down as disqualified. Recalls, there's a lot of boats over early, but I don't remember doing that here. If there is a general recall, when you lower the recall signal with one horn sound, the warning signal starts 1 minute later. And everybody else starts in sequence unless the sailing instructor says something. During the race, the whole race committee should keep their eye on the weather. Is it changing? Are we getting thunderstorms? Did the direction change? They should monitor the progress of the fleet. To Mary Lou's point, the Cal Bay racing instructions, the one design races say that if you're going to have a set of course inside of the bay between K and W in here, and if the first boat of that fleet doesn't get to the mark within 30 minutes, the race must be abandoned. You have no choice. So you have to make the abandonment signal, which is code flag N, 3 horns, announce it on the radio, and they'll come back, and you start the race all over again. You may end up at that point. It's a matter of judgment. The next fleet probably started already, but those guys, when they all get back, you start the race. You also have the right to say racing is abandoned, return to shore with the signals that are up there. That's if the wind has died, you don't expect it to come back, and
Which are the signs that are in the bay? Is D in the bay, M in the bay, K in the bay?
I'm pretty sure it's
K.
K and W. Am I right?
That's good.
K and W.
all those
Everything's
days.
low.
Everything's south of K. But I once jerk that I am. I once gave him a course of M.
Yeah.
All right, probably UM. And the win, well, first of all, they got the U within the 30 minutes, so that wasn't the issue. But they couldn't get back from M. I eventually abandoned the race, went out with the race committee boat, towed back the boats that needed it.
I remember that well.
I'm sure you do. And everybody was pissed. They were not happy. You know, and I must tell you, I was influenced by an old time racer who was on my committee, and he was used to longer races. The current thinking, as I told you, is short races, windward leeward. If you stick to that pattern, the group is happy. The only question is, did they get to the first mark within the 30 minutes? You know, and I don't think I have ever given. I have never had them not get to the first mark in 30 minutes, but I'm sure it happens.
Okay, but if your first mark is M, then you don't care about all this.
Right.
Okay.
Right, because it's outside. It's outside the inner bay. What's described as
So
the inner bay.
K, south of K is in the bay, and north of K is not.
W.
Well, it's a line. It's a line between. It's an imaginary line between K and it. And K is off of Barker's Point. You know, it's a green flasher. And M is, I'm sorry, W is a mark, plumb point. Plumb point. What did I say? Sorry about that. Plumb point. And W is generally fairly close to the speedo sign, that 5 mile raft. You know, 5 mile an hour raft. It's generally that.
Actually, the sonars by Spinnaker, so they definitely are windward lewards. But the MBOs and IWTs can be the triangular course, but also down in the south part of the bay.
Okay. All right, so and now, do the MBOs not want windward leeward? I mean, if I was sailing a non-spinning boat, I would not want them.
I think it's up to this committee.
Yeah, well, all right, so, all right, well, they raise a good point. Sonars use spinners, so windward leeward races are good for them. They get lots of exercise. If MBOs and ideal 18s don't use spinners, so they don't want to go dead downwind. So it's better to have a little reaching in the deal.
Yes.
Okay. We talked about changing courses. I already covered that, but you signaled with boat flag C, and it's before you get to the mark before the one you're changing. Ditto would shorten your courses. I think we covered that pretty well. If you're abandoning races, and you know you could abandon, you know, because they didn't get to the first mark within 30 minutes, or you know, when I sent them out to M, with egg on my face, I abandoned the race, but I didn't abandon it until it was clear that nobody was going to finish. You know, and you have to be careful about that, because if one guy is way ahead, and it happened, you don't want to cut him off from losing the race, or you know, prematurely, because he's going to be pretty ticked off. So you have to use a little discretion there and make sure that you're abandoning under the proper circumstances. And all the races have time limits on them. And again, the sailing instructions talk about that. And if no boat finishes within the time limit, which is what happened on the M thing, I had to abandon. Sometimes you can abandon out of empathy for the poor people that are absolutely going to win. It doesn't, you don't have to wait until they run out of time, but you can. Depends on the circuit. You have to make an evaluation. Will somebody finish within the time limit, and are they continuing to race? Right. Well, that's just what happens. A lot of boats will call in and say, you know, we've had it. We're going home, And if you get a lot of that, you have to be sensitive to what that message is. And you can ask for abandoning, go back, no more racing for today, or you can do abandon and come back with the racing more. If the race committee sees an infraction, they can protest the vote. But they have to tell the vote that they're protested, and they have to file their protest with the government for protest. But they have to see it with their own eyes. Speaking of protest, we have our protest committee chairman here. You want to say a few words, Woody?
Well, first of all, if you haven't received enough information, you go forward.
Oh, right.
Everybody gets it. 15 minutes.
You don't think you received enough information tonight, and you'd like to be a PRO, we have a special activity for you. So you want to be trained as a PRO, and you have experience racing in sailboats, and you can get checked out by Captain Vic to run the Junior Sailor Race Committee output boat before the day of the racing. You can join me on either Sunday, August 7th. It's the same day that we're having the single-handed club race. Also, we'll be doing that, but if you want to become a PRO, it's a good thing to do. Or on Saturday, September 10th, the day before the Commodores Cup, in which case you will have a second instructor, and we will meet earlier, and we'll go through all the details of being the PRO with you, and then we'll let you do most of the work on the boat. And if you look up, we'll have more PROs. Since we have more races this year, we're going to need more PROs. So if you're interested in doing that, either let me know, or Richard certainly, who schedules all the races. I think. So 2 seconds about the protest?
Protest. We haven't had a protest in several years, but if there were a protest, Woody's a judge.
The only thing about protests that you should know is that there are 2 ways of protesting in Pennsylvania, especially with the young guys. You have to go through the normal procedures of announcing to the other voting protesting that you are protesting. As soon as you have the infraction, or the other person has the infraction, you have to put up a red flag simultaneously so that they can see that. Then you have to file a written protest, and in general, it has to be filed before the Monday after the racing at noon, and either has to go to Manhasset or they can file it here. And if somebody does that, somebody in the committee should always be looking to see if somebody's coming to file a protest that day. Because we're supposed to recognize it was delivered, and write down the time it was delivered and the name of the person who delivered it, so that if we have to have a hearing, we will have all the information to do that. And as Richard just said, I've been the protest chair for 4 years. The last time we had a protest, we had a double protest, but they weren't satisfied with our own, so 3 years ago. Before that, we were the one protesting. So we don't have very much of that. But there are lots of ways to respond if you've made a mistake. If you turns, if you're on PHR, if you penalize your time, since we want everybody to keep sailing, we don't want them to be excluded from this. That's it.
And for those of you who don't know, Woody is an officially trained judge and protest person. He's been sailing his whole life in all sorts of regattas and boats. So he's a good guy to learn from.
Thank you.
There's one other thing that the race committee should do regarding protests. When a boat finishes, if they're flying a red flag, or if they report to you that they're protesting such and such a vote, you record that on the scoring sheet. So there's a record of it, if you want to know. If there's a missing mark, report that to somebody on the race committee, the race management committee, or to the Cowboy Racing Association. Such as when some of us were sailing last year, not necessarily racing, we saw that I wasn't where it belonged. We reported that to the Thirsty Thursday group and to the Cowboy Racing Association, and we just stopped using that anymore. The finish, reporting the finish. Both finishes when any part of her hull crosses the finish line from the direction of the last mark. The finish is the line between the blue mark, the blue flag on the committee boat, and the finishing pin. Make sure you hung the blue flag. A lot of people are forgetting to hang the blue flag, particularly in the one design races, because they use the orange flag to start. They should use the blue flag to finish, even if it's the same line. The cider calls out the sail number, and the reporter reports the sequence in which they finish. If it's a North Shore Yacht Club race, you call out the finishing time, hour, minute, seconds, and the reporter finishes, records that. After the race, you make sure all the boats are accounted for. If the boat drops out of the race, it's proper etiquette to inform the race committee. And sometimes the race, the one design boats don't necessarily do it. They don't have motors. They can't always get back, but they should call you on the radio and let you know that they're dropped out of the race and not going to be this way.
I simply remember that there were the yellow and the orange flag that start and the finish. But now, twice you've mentioned the blue flag. Does that take the place of what used to be the orange flag?
The orange flag and the yellow flag,
Yeah,
they're the same flag, but one is faded and one is not. Am I right on that?
That's right.
Okay. So, but as of 2021, the blue flag came into the use, and that is the finish line now. And there is a blue, the finish flag in the bin there. So use it. It may not make any difference, let's say, on the start finish line on the one design races. But again, you want to do it. You want to do it properly.
The blue flag is on the committee boat.
Blue flag is on the committee, on the worry board, yes.
And the orange and yellow are out on the pin.
Oh, no,
Wait a
no,
minute.
no.
We post the starting line on the committee boat. You post an orange or a faded orange, yellow flag, and on the pins, the starting pin has one yellow faded flag. So the starting line is between the pin with one faded yellow flag and an orange/yellow flag on the committee below.
The finish.
And the finish, if you're starting on the other side, if the finish is on the opposite side of the boat, you post the blue flag and the finish pin, which has two orange/yellow things on it.
And if the blue fades, then you can do it.
Right now,
All right, very good, thank you. Yeah.
is this blue? This is true blue. American blue, true blue, but blue, red, whatever.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, you account for the boats to the best of your ability. Sometimes you lose one, but hopefully not really. You repack all the stuff. You take all the flags down from the boat. You take the horse packers down. You put them in the container in the worrywart cabin. You lock the worrywart. You retrieve the marks that you've set, whether it's starting and finish lines or special marks, whatever. You bring that stuff back to the yacht club. You unload the flags. The bags, and you put them in the storage area in there. If there's gonna be a race the following day, leave the pins on the boat. You know, the starting and the special marks, leave that and the anchors on the boat. If there's not gonna be racing the next day, bring that stuff up. Richard? Yes, sir.
If you're using the starting line subsequently as a finish line, is it improper to put up the yellow and the blue flag at the same time?
No, that's fine. That's fine, because it's totally conceivable. On the one design races, you have to do that because you're having boats finish and then you're having another race that starts later. So both flags have to fly. Do they do that actually, Bill, or not?
See that again?
When you're using a start/finish line. So the starting line starts with an orange flag on the worry ward.
Right.
Do they in fact put up a blue finish flag on in the same vicinity to indicate that it's now a finish line? It's both.
No.
I thought the blue flag went on the committee.
That's on the committee.
That's the worry.
The worry ward.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
The blue flag goes on the worry ward. But I do think that most of the other, I mean, I have to tell you, I posted the blue flag on the same side as the start flag when I was just doing one design races.
I have rarely seen it.
Well, but I'm a straight laced guy, you know? But I guess it's the call of, Woody, you want to help us on this? Have an opinion on this?
You do the best you can.
You do the best you can. The best I can is I posted the blue flag and an orange flag because that's going to continue to be a starting line and it's going to continue to be a finish line. That's what I do. But I'm sure that many people don't do that. Everybody got it? Okay. If there's a problem with the race committee vote, you report it to Captain Vic or to some member of the race committee, the race management committee, or to the launch guy. You put the scoring sheets for the one design races. You can do it to Mary Lou if she's here, or you put it into the blinker mail slot at the base of the steps. If it's a North Shore Yacht Club race, you give it to the member of the race management committee. In the end, we're going to give it to Julio, who's going to go through his computations on figuring out the handicaps and collapse time. Reporting equipment problems to Vic. Unless Captain Vic has said something else, you know, talk to him whether or not you're going to bring the boat back to the mooring, or he or his staff is going to bring that boat back to the mooring. He goes to hot and cold depending upon, you know, how much, how busy he is, and so. We're almost finished, but then Bob raised his hand.
Yeah, I think something I've fallen into in the past and took some precautionary action about. And that is when you're running the one design races during the same time that you're running the club race, you have to be sure that the club racers finish in the same direction as the one design, and they don't finish opposite the start of the one design race to prevent collision. I've usually used in the past a separate finish line rather for all the boats during the days when I was at a one design and club race run.
I think I said that, but if I didn't say it, he's absolutely right. If we're running both races, you know, club and one design, use a separate finish line. And when you put up that T flag, it's for everybody who's out there racing that day. So it's the one design boat. But he also brings up a good point. of, you have to make the courses such that the boats are coming from the same direction, roughly the same direction, so they do in fact cross the finish line from the same direction, all the boats, as opposed to. Yes, Mary Lou.
I just have one thing to say. Anybody who's on race committee, when you have a club race, I'm sure your club racer has a cruising start with that additional 5 minutes. On the start, we've been having 9, 10 boats on the starting line. So if 2 or 3 boats are coming, 1 o'clock is 1300, it's 1332. 1332 versus 56 versus 57 versus 58. If you don't want to write 13, that's 6 numbers you have to write in a very short sequence of time. Because if 3 boats are starting at almost within 2 or 3 seconds, which they do, you might shorten the first 1300, which is 1 o'clock, just to make sure you get the seconds, because I can't tell you how many races are won by our North Shore Yacht Club boats within seconds of each other,
Yeah.
right? With the HRF.
No, going forward, I will be well ahead of you.
Yeah.
There will be no question about that.
Unless you go over out.
But Mary Lou is right. It does get hectic, and the recorder and the guy who's citing the line have to be careful to get the whole story. And we won't talk about the PRO who left out the seconds because he happens to be in the room. And his face is turning red right now. But that really screwed us up a little bit. So you do want the hour, the minutes, and the seconds, and you have to be sure when there's post racing that you make a distinction for each boat. However you figure that out. Yes, sir.
The scoring sheet for the club races, and maybe we should discuss this separately, but I remember last year or two, there were some differences of opinion as to what the scoring sheet should show. The name of the boat, the name of the owner, the PRF, and so on, or very little. Is that being resolved, number 1, or not, which is fine, but I'll let you know. And 2, who would be preparing the scoring sheet?
Well, we start with a scratch sheet that's prepared by the race committee, the race management committee, that generally has names and sale numbers.
And yes,
Some boats don't have sale numbers. Our club is small enough that most of the PROs know which boat is which. So I don't care whether they record. Well, first of all, the name and the sale number are on the scratch sheet if it was submitted to us. If it's a last minute entry, I don't care whether you give the name or the sale number, as long as the people recording record the right times. That's what counts. Am I saying that clearly enough for you?
Well, Julio, the objective is to give an updated version of that scratch sheet that started with, right? So if there's one ad, the race committee has been supplied with that scratch sheet. So they basically fill in the blanks. And they fill in the blanks and they send them to you and do the scoring.
They fill in the
let's
start.
talk about separate.
Yeah, but look, it's possible that somebody comes out who didn't pre-register. They come out,
That's right.
the race committee reports either their sale number or their name.
Okay,
And,
but you do not need to list the PHRF, for example.
well, the race committee does, the PRO doesn't know what the race committee, what the guys, PHRF is. Either we have a record of it, or we ask him for it. But by the time you get it,
Yeah.
if you don't have his PHRF, then you talk to the race management committee and you get it. We either get it from the skipper, if he has a certificate, or we calculate it.
Yeah, but the issue came up because some PROs prefer to have as much room as possible on the sheet to write the numbers, and so they like to eliminate all unnecessary information, like the name of the.
But they're supplied with a pre-printed sheet. They're supplied with a
Exactly.
pre-print.
On the spec sheet.
Okay, well, I'm on the last page, so,
I've got a couple of things to say.
a couple things, yes, sir.
Yeah, by the way, that means two, bro.
Okay,
No.
so Richard waved his three-ring binder, and he said we've got the notices of races and the size and all that stuff. Now, I'll let you know, this stuff is on the website 2 or 3 weeks prior to the event. So you can't say, well, I gotta go home with three-ring binder, because the stuff's already there 3 weeks in advance. For example, the one design sailing instructor. If it's the day race, we've got the notice of race, we've got the sailing instructor. So a PRO can get way ahead rather than say, I've got to go to the club and get a three-ring binder and read, because it's already there. It's in front of them 3 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks in advance. So it's very, very important to know that. And I think it's also very important, especially the new people, the categories of races that we have. We have the club races, which are North Shore Yacht Club boats only. We have the open regattas, which are North Shore Yacht Club races plus outsiders. And we have the one designs, which are the Manhasset Bay smaller boats. So we deal with those 3 categories. The most complex category is where we have a North Shore Yacht Club club race followed by a one design race. There you are talking about a club race with a 5-minute start and maybe a cruising start, followed by a one design race with a 3-minute start. The most simplest race that we support as PROs is a one design race with a 3-minute start and nothing else. Where do the one designs come from? They come from us. We have a couple sonars in the club. We have Ideal 18s at Manhasset Bay at the Yacht Club, as well as Port Washington. So when we deal with one design, we have to think they are our customers. And if we abandon the race, we let Port Washington Yacht Club know we've abandoned, or we let Manhasset Bay know we've abandoned. The question is, how do you communicate to them? You go to the sailing instructions and it gives you the VHF channel number to their dock. We'll say, Port Washington Yacht Club, we're abandoning races for the day. End of story. No more chatting. You do that as well to Manhasset Bay. But just keep 3-minute starts, 5-minute starts. The simplest event we have for PROs is a simple one design activity, which happens about half the time when we have PROs. So it's really simple. Again, we covered a lot of exceptions, and I've been out there for 20 to 40 times a year. And the exceptions that we covered, yes, they're there, but most of the time they're not there. So life is really simpler than what we discussed today. Another thing I want to talk about is that race committee vote. Julio brought it up, and unfortunately, I get dragged into this race committee vote issue. The big issue for special marks, typically it's when we have an east or westerly breeze. And because we don't have marks on the bay to cover that. So we have to post those special marks. Therefore, we need a marked boat. I have been in a race committee where our marked boat says we're not going to go because I don't have enough experience driving a marked boat. So we have to be ready for that. And how do you get ready? You look at the breeze 2 or 3 days in advance. If it's easterly or westerly, you say, son of a gun, I better have that marked boat driver be able to drive a boat to place a mark. And I run into that too often out there as a racer. And once again, I'm speaking from experience. So, the mark vote is a big issue. The mark vote, I'm going to bring it back to the club. I get involved in more issues bringing that mark vote back to the club. People screaming and yelling at each other. Captain Vic pissed off. Do I bring it back to the dock? Do I bring it back to the mooring? You've got to clarify that stuff in advance. Yeah. Very important.
The mark vote of the committee vote?
The race committee vote, the makeup.
The makeup.
And the mark vote and the committee vote are the same.
The mark vote is what you make them. You get to and from, don't worry about it. But if the make vote turns into a mark vote, if you have people without
it's the same vote, that's different things.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what I run into is that we'll have people that describe the
Yeah.
committee go to and from the board, but when they're asked to do anything else, I'm not ready for that, I'm not trained. So you gotta stay heavy. And I see that again and again.
When they just have to put out the start of the finish line, they have to for that thing. Well, you said it's, when it comes to Marco, they also have to use it to put the start of the line and the finish line.
That's
Then
right.
Let's go.
Let's see.
Okay.
Got any more on your list, Bill?
The start, obviously you use Mako to put start and finish. line.
He's being facetious. What he's saying
That's the
is,
start and
if
finish.
they know how to set a start mark, you ought to know how to set a special mark. That's all he's trying to say. Do you have anything else on
And
your
there's
list?
reluctance to do that.
Use the same vote.
Well, that's because some people are lazy. And we don't want them to be lazy. I tried to emphasize, if it's appropriate to put a special mark, do it.
It's as simple as that, but that's what.
Okay, are you, no more on your
One
list?
more thing, with one design, it's so simple, use the automatic, you're not gonna do 21 horns in 3 minutes. Just push the button and use the automatic start.
Yeah, so some of our PROs are reluctant to use the automatic form. Please use the automatic form. It's, you start the sequence. If any of you want to serve as PROs and are insecure about any of this stuff, not only will Woody give you a one-on-one in the course of the season, I will work with anybody before the season on any part of this that you want to work on. If it's the automatic horn or the non-automatic stuff, I'll be glad to work with you. Yes, sir.
If I may say, in Sag Harbor, we have 7 races in one Sunday with the automatic. 7 days, bam, 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 bam. I tell you, it's easy and
It's very reliable.
I still haven't understood it.
Where do
but
you
it
must,
works.
otherwise you won't hear your wife.
I know that you didn't mention it, but I think it's worth. You didn't mention it, but it's worth emphasizing.
That's good.
All right, could you be, can we hold the chat up, please, until he asks the question? Carlos?
Sorry, I know that you mentioned it, but it's important to emphasize that if you use the automatic sequence, it's very important, right after you start it, to press the 2 buttons and stop the automatic roll.
Yes.
Because otherwise, you
Yeah, everybody has it, after the start of the fleet.
Yeah.
You stop the sequence with the 2 buttons. Otherwise, it's gonna keep, it's gonna do a rolling start.
And then it's
And, yes, sir.
The automatic form, give you a cognitive or no?
Yes,
It does. give you
Yes.
a-
but it's less than a minute. You know, it's pretty short. I don't know who programmed it, Don, but
The
it's,
first gun. Comes in there, it's less than a minute. in the first gun.
yes, yes,
Come in there, within a minute. you have the first
yes,
gun. Then it's second and third is stuff.
yes. Well, no, not second, third, third. Remember what you saw there. There are many horns on the 3-minute start. It's not, just a minute. Let's go to, go to slide 39. Just a minute. There is, I'd rather you see it.
May I help? Absolutely.
Slide 39. While we're waiting for them to do that, how many of you who have never served as PROs are now ready to serve as PRO? Raise your hand. All right, we got
What
one.
do you say, 37?
Any of you who have never served on race committee, are you ready to serve on race committee now?
Get it with the
Oh, we
PRO.
got 2.
Get it with the PRO.
Yeah, with a PRO, of course. Excellent, good. Okay, you guys can hear.
I
it.
would like to.
All right, so look, Paul, please look at there. You see, attention.
There you go. 39 or 40.
Wrong one.
Okay, I'll go back.
Okay. Yo, let's keep it down. 1 meeting. Everybody has to see this. On the automatic one, you get 3 come hitters, beep, beep, beep. Then you go into that sequence where, look in this column and this column. So you get 3 horns, 3 minutes before the start. That's in effect the warning signal. There's no flash. No flash. That's the warning signal. But now this is for people who don't have stopwatches. That's what we're trying to do. So you see that sequence, and the last.
So the first one, series of short bursts. That's the come hither.
Yeah.
And that's automatic. Something like that.
You push the start the sequence button. It does that.
Okay. Then you get a warning, 3 long horns, and then 2 long horns. And that's 3
And by the
long
way,
horns.
that is right here on your clipboard. Same thing, right there in your clipboard. And it's also on the sailing instructions for the one design boats. You're gonna have this with you. So it's there.
Will you make all of these charts available on the website?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And well, don't forget, the Cal Bay Racing Association sailing instructors are on the website.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, but I was referring to your chart, this set of 100 charts that you presented tonight.
Yes, this will be
This
on
whole
the website. This entire
that
presentation.
I just gave you, this PowerPoint, is on the website right now. If you go to race committee page, you're gonna see it.
It's no big deal.
Okay, you got it?
Yeah.
Okay, so the last thing, I now got the volunteers at the end of the race, after you've dealt with the committee vote and Captain Vic and all that stuff, come up to the deck and participate in some refreshments and some beer. The guys who race always give the race committee beer, whether they don't even have to bring their own beer. Somebody brings beer for you. Okay, we thank you all for attending. We appreciate your attention.